Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads podcast, a show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Miss Teri M Brown. Born in Athens, Greece, as an Air Force brat, she came into this world with an imagination full of stories to tell. She now calls the North Carolina coast home, and the peaceful nature of the sea has been a great source of inspiration for her creativity. She graduated from UNC Greensboro with a multitude of degrees, majors in elementary education and psychology, as well as minors in math and sociology. She just couldn't settle on one thing. While homeschooling her four children, she began her writing career, but focused by focusing on small businesses, writing articles, blog posts, and website content. During this time, she published five nonfiction self-help books dealing with real estate and finance, receiving first runner-up in the Eric Kaufman Book Awards for 301 Simple Things You Can Do to Sell Your Home Now, as well as the finalist in the USA Best Books Award for How to Open and Operate a Financially Successful Redesign, Redecorate, and Real Estate Stage in Business. In 2017, after finally getting out of an emotionally abusive 14-year marriage, she began dabbling in fiction, a lifelong dream of hers. She began writing in earnest and published her debut novel in 2022, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, her historical fiction set in Ukraine, and her second novel published in 2023, which was An Enemy Like Me, takes place during World War II. Now her latest book, Peg Unhinged, is a humorous look at menopause launched back in April of this year. And today she's here to really share her writing journey and share more about her journey into writing itself. So Teri, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and really catching up with you. So welcome to Southern Reads.
Thank you so much, Noah. I'm excited to be here with you today.
So I actually have met Teri before. She actually was one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the earliest guests I had for Lethal Venom. I think she was probably the second or third guest that I had for my show back last year. So I can't wait to really be able to reach back into her. And I know that we talked a little bit about her journey then, but we're going to really dive into it now. But share with me just kind of how you got started writing and what kind of inspired you to begin writing.
Well, as a little girl, I said I wanted to be an author, but I also said I wanted to be an Olympic ice skater and a brain surgeon. So I don't think I really had a clue what I wanted. I knew I loved books, but life kind of gets in the way. I went to college. As you read, I have, lots of degrees. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I got married. I had four children. I got divorced. I got remarried. That second marriage was a big mistake. He turned out to be an emotionally abusive man, and I didn't want to be divorced twice, so I stuck with it a really long time. During that time, I needed to figure out how to bring in some kind of an income because I was homeschooling my kids. I wanted to be able to be home with my kids, but trying to live on one income was difficult. So I started looking at like small business writing. What could I do to help small businesses? Because you figure in 2000, the internet was still a really new thing, and small businesses were putting their websites on for the first time. And I was reading the things they wrote about themselves, and they were really not very good. And I thought, well, I could help them. So I started writing website content, small books, things like that. I was asked to write other books, but they were always nonfiction. So I started really having a desire to write fiction novels, but I was living in this unsafe relationship and I didn't want to. I don't know, I didn't want to put myself out in the world like that because if people didn't like what I wrote, that's just one more someone telling me I'm no good. But I got out of that relationship in 2017 and words started pouring out of me. So I wrote several, we'll call them bad manuscripts. I mean, they were my first ones, but they weren't very good yet. But I wasn't telling anyone I was writing because I didn't believe in myself and I didn't believe I was ever could really be an author of fiction. And so I met Bruce, who eventually became my husband. And he said that he'd always wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle. And I had been wanting to do something big and bold, something like so incredibly big that people would say to me, there's no way you can do that. And then when I did it, I'd be able to prove to them that I still had a lot of value. Um, so I just asked him, is that something you're going to talk about forever? Or are you going to do it? He said, no, I want to do it. And I said, count me in. So in 2020, we rode across the United States on a tandem bicycle. So I rode 3,102 miles. And I haven't been on a bicycle in 40 years prior to meeting him. And so this was really well outside of my comfort zone. And at the end of that ride, I realized I could do anything I put my mind to. It was a matter of what did I want? So I asked myself, what do you want? And the answer was, I want to be a fiction author. And 14 months later, my first novel came out.
So when you're writing these books and when you first started writing about nonfiction, what people I don't think really understand about nonfiction is, you have to be kind of truthful with what you
Yeah.
write about, and you have to do a lot of research. Whereas fiction, you can make up this very highly fictioned world, and you can make some of the most wackiest claims and rules for this world because it's fiction, it's not real. Does that put a lot of stress on you when you're writing nonfiction versus fiction, where you have to be truthful and you have to do a lot of research and factual background checks about things, whereas fiction you can just write more freely?
You know, for me, it's the other way around because I love research and I'm good at it. And so you just research until you have the facts and then you find a nice way to display those facts and you're done. Whereas for me, fiction, yes, you get to make it up and it's all, whatever you write is correct because it's your world and your characters, etc. But it's coming from deep inside of me. These are like my babies, where I'm putting them out into the world. And it's a little scary. If you put facts out into the world that you have looked up and you have found all of the facts, and someone doesn't like your book, it's because they didn't care about real estate and didn't want to read it, or they didn't care about, whatever it was you wrote about. But if they don't like your character, it almost feels like they're saying they don't like you. And so for me, it was just opposite. Writing fiction is a little bit scarier because you have to put your soul out into the world and say, okay, what do you think of this? And if someone doesn't like it, then you have to be brave enough to like take a deep breath and still keep trying.
For a lot of these fiction books that you've come out with, they kind of follow this somewhat story and they're kind of based off of kind of a journey. What are some of the inspirations that you had that have happened to you in your life that kind of inspired your fiction novels?
For me, I love to write strong women characters. And I think one of the reasons that I like to write a strong woman character is because there have been times in my life where I've been very strong, and there have been times in my life where I have not been, or it's been buried. I think I've always been strong, but it's, kind of buried by life circumstances. And so for me, it's that journey of like being strong, having it kind of taken from you and then figuring out how to come back again and be even stronger than before. And most of my books do have that kind of journey in them where we have a main character who is going to struggle. And then we have to see, can she come out of it? Will she come out of it on the other side?
How do you go about your writing process? Do you work on multiple novels at one time? Do you focus primarily on one novel? Share with me a little bit about your writing process.
I am definitely a one novel person at a time. I think my characters would start getting confused as to which story they were supposed to be in. Um, that said, I do like to write sometimes little small pieces while I'm writing something big because a novel takes a long time. You don't just sit down in an afternoon and write a novel and then you get to move on. And so it's hard sometimes to feel like, am I getting anywhere? Am I making any progress? Am I being successful at something? So sometimes I like to write short stories or flash fiction or something much smaller that I can sit down, get done, and then almost like make a check mark on my to-do list and say, there, I've completed something. But in terms of my novels, I definitely do one at a time. Um, and I'm also, yeah, I wouldn't follow the way I write. I don't recommend it to anyone, but I am a pantser, which means that I just write by the seat of my pants. Whatever comes to my mind, that's what I start to write. And on top of that, I'm a binge writer. So I might sit down and write for 4 or 5 days in a row for hours and hours and hours, and then not write anything for 2 or 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, I have a new idea and I sit down and I write and I write and I write. So I have a very unusual process, but it works for me.
Do you prefer doing pen to pencil or pen to pencil, pen to paper, or do you prefer more the digital typing of writing?
Yeah, I'm definitely a typer. And I think it's because I'm older, I'm 62. When I was coming through high school, they made you take typing classes. And so I took a typing class and I was good at it and I was fast. Um, when I try to write, with a pencil or a pen on paper, I can't write fast enough for how fast my brain is going. And then I go and I look at what I've written and I can't even read it. It's like, what is this chicken scratch? I can't even figure out what it was I was trying to say on the paper. So for me, it's just a much better, smoother thing if I can sit down and, you know, use the keyboard and get it all out that way. That said, I do sometimes write things down. Maybe I'm somewhere and I don't have my computer handy and I've come up with an idea, but I don't write long passages that way. I usually keep it to short little notes that will remind me of what I want to write so that when I get to my computer, I can get it in.
I'm the same way when it comes to writing. I did poetry for a long time and I was kind of like you. I had more of like I get ideas and I could write them all in one setting and then not write poetry for like a month and hand. It's
Yeah,
kind of how I've got done. I'm a typer as well. I pretty much prefer typing as well because when it comes to poetry, and it's different than kind of fiction and writing a short story or a
right.
novel. You have to do a lot of rhyming when it comes to poetry, and so there's been so many times where I'm typing and I don't like something and I exit out and delete it and retype it out. I think if I did that on paper, there'd be so many scribbles and
Yeah,
crossed out words, and it just become a messy and would look not pleasing to the eye. So
yeah,
I prefer
absolutely.
for me, I type it all out, and then if it's like if I wanted to write it on paper, I would write like the final version of it on paper to make it look real neat and make people believe that I did this all in one setting. But I,
So that's interesting. I was at it was a little writers group that I had been invited to. I was visiting that town, and so I got invited to this group, and they were doing a poetry um little class, and I poetry's not my thing, and I'm not good at it, but they were, giving you ideas and then kind of left you to write a poem. So I've got my paper and my pencil and I wrote things and then I crossed them and added words. And by the time I was done, and they wanted us to read it to everyone afterward, I had to then pull that out of my notebook, set it off to one side, and rewrite it because I wasn't going to be able to read it out loud as messy as it was there. Because, like you said, I crossed words out, I got rid of whole lines, I took a line I had lower and put it up higher because I realized it needed to come first, and all of that just makes using the keyboard so much easier because you can move things around and cry
right.
out different words. You can type several words in and then get rid of some words and decide, oh, that
Mhm.
sentence is too long, that one's too short. You can, yeah. I think it's because I don't think things completely through before I start writing. And then I look at it and think, I don't really like that. And then I want to go back and make changes.
Another thing about typing and the thing about writing too is I think you have to have very pretty handwriting to want to do handwritten stuff. Now, for
Yeah.
me, my school didn't really do a lot of help when it came to learning how to write and all that. So I basically had to teach myself how to write. And, you know, at first it was really, really bad. I look back at some of my earlier things that I did back in elementary school, and it's interesting. Some things look better than my handwriting is now, but I gotta say, doing a lot of going from a lot of just writing so much to just doing everything on computers, I think it's made my handwriting worse now.
Yeah,
So
I think, yeah, and I'm now 62. I cannot imagine trying to go back and like work on that to make it pretty. I don't have the time in my day. I'm so fast with, the keyboard. I might as well just stick to that. And if someone wants to write it out for me and make it look beautiful and do that, great, you come do that for me. But I've never had pretty handwriting. I just never have. And I can't even read my own handwriting when I start going fast.
right. Um, so going, do you now that you've kind of dabbled in fiction and you've had the kind of your experience with fiction, do you prefer writing it now? Do you still write any of your nonfiction stuff anymore?
So I wrote nonfiction through about 2020. Then when COVID hit, a lot of small businesses kind of pulled back. They didn't have the money to hire extra help. They did a lot of things in-house. And now with AI, so many people just use AI instead of hiring someone to write nonfiction. That's not to say I never write it. Like I wrote a memoir about going across the United States on a tandem. And so, that's nonfiction. And I would write some more. Like I'm not opposed to it, but I really like writing fiction. There's something that's very free about that allows you to, dive into that creativity and just write what's in my mind, what's on my heart. Whereas with nonfiction, you tend to, I don't know, be given a topic and this is what you have to write about. And I just don't find it as satisfying.
Looking through all your fiction, well, so far, what's been the book that you are most proud of?
Oh, that's so hard. That's like asking me which child I love the most. Um, I I think right now, the one that I'm most proud of is Daughters of Green Mountain Gap. And my reason for that is that this year it won the North Carolina Humanities Award and was chosen for NC Reads, which is a big deal in North Carolina. They pick 5 books a year. They have a big online book club. So that book is really, I don't know. It's like the first one that is kind of like pushing me out of just another author that nobody's ever heard of. I'm starting to, at least in North Carolina, have a little bit of name recognition now because of that book. But the one that I've enjoyed writing the most that makes me laugh is my newest one, Peg Unhinged. And that book, I don't know, like I said, it makes me laugh. The character is funny. She's meant to be funny. I had to figure out how to keep humor going throughout the whole thing without it becoming too silly or too slapstick, and how to keep her voice to sound like someone that is a little bit sarcastic and has a little bit of dark humor and those kinds of things, and still tell a really good story and have my character have an arc. So I would say that Peg Unhinged was my most challenging thing to write. Daughters of Green Mountain Gap right now, I'm just super proud of that, all that it's doing at the moment.
How do you go about publishing and promoting your books? Do you do more of the traditional publishing, working with a company? Have you done self-publishing? And if you've done both, which one have you or do you prefer the most?
So I've done hybrid publishing, which is not quite traditional and uh, not quite self. It's like in between. And I've done self-publishing. So I've done both hybrid and self. Um, I think the hybrid publishing was extremely helpful for me, especially as I got started, because I didn't really know what I was doing. And with a hybrid publisher, you have a team. You have an editor, you have a proofreader, you have a cover designer, you have someone that does your interior. They get everything put into all of the systems. They do all of that stuff. And when you're new, when I got started, I didn't know anything about any of that. And it was so nice to have that team behind me. As I've been going on more and more, I'm learning all of these things. I understand where to find a good editor. I know how to find someone to create a good cover. I know these things now that I didn't know before. So I think that I would be just as satisfied being self-published at this time, partially because I like my time frame. You know, when you go with a traditional publisher, they accept your work and it can be 2 or 3 years before they then get your book out. And I don't like to wait that long. Once I've got the book done, I want it out. I want people to read it. And so self-publishing allows you to work a lot faster. It's under your own time schedule and not the schedule of somebody else.
What's the biggest thing that you've learned the most about yourself through your writing career?
That's a hard one. Well, something that I've learned that I liked that I didn't know I liked was public speaking. I used to not even think. I was terrified to public speak. I would get in front of people to talk and the blood would rush in my ears so loudly I couldn't even hear myself talk and I was just so nervous. Over the last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to talk in front of quite a few groups, lots of podcasts, etc. And now, when I'm done doing that, I feel almost high. Like, whoa, this was fun. Like, let's do that again. Almost like riding a roller coaster, where you just like, whoa, that was a little bit scary, but a whole lot of fun. And I want to do it again and again. So I have learned that I really love being out in public. I think the other thing that I've learned is just how capable I am. Like, if there is something I want to learn, if there's some new technology out there, or there's an app I need to figure out, or, you know, I'm going to do a self-published children's book, but I have to figure out how to do all the back end Amazon things, I can do it. Sure, it's a little bit of trial and error and it's tough and I don't always get it right the first time, but I'm capable and I can figure it out. And that's a really good feeling to realize that, yes, I'm getting older and yes, the technology keeps just flying ahead of me, but I'm capable of figuring it out.
Now, kind of going into your latest novel here with Peg Unhinged, you found this as kind of a humorous look at how at menopause. Tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about what kind of was a big inspiration for this book and what inspired you to write a humorous take on menopause.
So when I was a preteen, 11 or 12 years old, I read the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. And I read it 1,000 times. And this is a book about a group of like 11 and 12-year-old girls who just cannot wait for puberty to happen. And they're so excited. And, they're just, this is like all they can talk about. I don't know why that book stuck with me the way it did, but I read that book over and over and over as a preteen. Well, it became a movie a few years back. And when it became a movie, I saw an interview or something. I don't even remember now, but it got me to thinking about the book. And my thought was, I wonder whatever happened to Margaret. And my answer was, she goes by Peg and she's going through menopause. And it made me laugh when I had that thought. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun to write a book about a woman going through menopause and treat it in a similar way to the way Judy Blume does the girls waiting for puberty, and this is women dealing with menopause. And so this is not Judy Blume's Margaret. I named my character Peg, but Peg probably read Judy Blume's book as a preteen, just the way that I read Judy Blume's book as a preteen. And so that's kind of where it came from. And I just kept having these ideas of things that could be happening to Peg, hot flashes and forgetfulness and doing things like, putting her phone in the refrigerator and getting angry. All of a sudden the hormones are just everywhere and you just get like flipping angry for no reason at all and all of those things. And so I was able to write it in a way that even though if you're going through menopause, it doesn't feel very funny, it is funny to read along with Peg because when it's not happening to you, all of those things are actually quite hysterical.
Going forward, what are some of your big dreams that you would like to still accomplish when it comes to your writing? What are some things that you really still dream of that you really want to achieve?
Oh, I mean, like we can go real big. I would love to see one of my books become a movie. Like, wouldn't that be fabulous? But realistically speaking, I would I would like to continue writing a book a year, for as long as I can manage to do that. Um, I would like to try a couple of different genres. I've now done historical fiction, I've done a contemporary humor. Um, I don't know, I'd kind of like to try maybe a mystery or a thriller or something, like just try my hand at some other genres and see, how do I do? Because as an author, I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I want to keep growing. And I think one of the ways to continue growing as an author is to try your hand at different things. Change the tense, change your point of view, change the genre you're writing in, try something a little different. And so those are some things. And then kind of connected to my writing, I would also like to start doing some public speaking, doing some like keynote talks and things along that line, because I have found that I really enjoy it. And it's one more way I can spread my message.
Do any authors and upcoming writers that are listening that want to maybe try fiction or nonfiction as their starting point of their writing career, what advice do you have for them?
So the first thing that I always say is get started now. You don't have to wait for a certain time in your life or a certain thing to happen first or taking certain classes or anything like that, because you're never going to become a better writer until you actually start writing. You can think about it, you can read about it, but until you actually start writing, you're not going to get any better. Once you have written several things and you've gone back and you've done your editing, once you have something that you look at and you think, I like this piece, find someone that you trust who will be both kind and honest, and then listen to what they have to say. So, they'll tell you the things that are working, they'll tell you the things that aren't, and then take that information and go back and do some edits and just keep that process up. And eventually you're going to come up with something that is good enough to put out into the world, and then do that. Whether it's putting it out into the world on a blog or whether you actually look for a place to have it published.
Well, Terry, I appreciate you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today to share your story and to really share a lot about your books that you've come out with. For people that are interested in learning more about your stories, that they would like to purchase your books and check them out, where can they go to learn more information and where can they go to support you as well?
Yeah, the best place is to go to my website, which is my name, TeriMBrown.com. So it's TERIM Brown, BROWN.com. There you can find my books. I have a couple of different podcasts I'm a part of. You can find those. You can sign up for my newsletter. All my social media icons are there. And I even just have a contact me page. So if you wanted just to reach out and ask a simple question, I always do my best to get back to people who reach out to me.
And I will put all those links and everything in the description box and show notes below. Just check the description box to find those links. Feel free to follow the podcast on the socials so you can reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at Southern Dot Reads. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcasts. And feel free to also check out the website noahspodcasts.com to learn more about this show as well as the other shows that I do. There you'll find links to my socials, links where the podcast is available. So feel free to check that out. Subscribe and follow the podcast so you get notified of when new episodes come out. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Southern Reads.